doon din na ganun po ng Cruz-Angeles for Luminous on Trixie, Luminous on Facebook. Inint ko rin matapos muna si Sass dun sa kanyang assessment on the interview with the fishermen who were allegedly harassed doon sa Scarborough. Yung discussion natin today is primarily on historical references to the Chinese. Earlier today, nag-post kasi ako dun sa page an article by Oscar Franklin Tan, who noted yung tinatawag niyang casual racism of Rappler when referring to the president who had allegedly met with Filipino-Chinese businessmen. Mainit na rin lang na topic ang tungkol sa Scarborough and the participation of and our relations with China at yung mga ingay na nangyayari tungkol dito sa West Philippine Sea in general. Meron din pang ingay tungkol dun sa paglanding ng isang Chinese military plane sa Davao. So, kailangan natin i-explore kung ano yung historical context natin with the Chinese. Ngayon, as early as the 10th century, nagtitrade na tayo with China. 10th century yan, which means ang earliest recorded date is 982 AD. Ang earliest recorded written record on the trade between China and the Philippines. So, and this record is contained not here in the Philippines, of course, but in China itself. So, merong record, supposedly, ang Chinese, base dito sa paper ni Miss Louisa Yap, ang trade ng Chinese with the Philippines is as early as 982 AD. So the continuous trade with China means that hindi tayo strangers to the Chinese. Even after colonization in 1521, after the Spaniards arrived in 1521, recognized na nila na nandito yung Chinese. Ngayon, dahil sa kinilala din ng Spanish colonial authorities yung presence ng Chinese dito, kung kaya't nag-issue sila in 1594 ng isang edict, no, not 1594, sorry. Nag-issue sila ng rule noong time na yon na welcoming the Chinese at ina-encourage sila na mag-intermarry with the Filipinos, with the native population. So, but the Spanish had a very tenuous relationship with the Chinese. Habang ini-encourage nila na mag-intermarry at mag-acquire ng native status ang mga Chinese during the Spanish colonial period, the Spaniards also remember the Chinese pirate si Lima Hong. Si Lima Hong supposedly was one of those, well, not him himself, no, but his men were the first to have been able to breach the walls of Intramuros. Ngayon, at the time, the Spaniards believed that the walls of Intramuros were impenetrable, that their fortification was so advanced na walang makakapasok. Ngayon, naglanding si Lima Hong sa Cavite, pinadala yung mga tao niya sa Intramuros, at yung mga tao niya were able to climb up and be able to penetrate Intramuros. Medyo nawindang yung mga Kastila dito. So, ever since, yung mga Chinese who were living in the Philippines were put into what we call ghettos. So, ang tinatawag dito sa mga ghettos na ito ay yung mga parian. Pero in Binondo, the Chinese population that had intermarried with the native Filipinos, also known as Indios, were located or usually lived in the Binondo area, which later on also became the last known parian. Not necessarily a ghetto, pero during the ghettoification of the non-Christian Chinese and the Chinese who, did not assimilate with the local cultures, with the local Filipinos, matindi yung restrictions on them. So, the first parian was across, well, one of the first parians, not the first. The first parian was inside the Intramuros. And then a subsequent one is located in what is now Mehan Gardens, across from the Intramuros, across from Padre Burgos from the Intramuros. And as they characterized it, or as they described it, under the shadow of the canon. Ibig sabihin, within canon shot, yung ghetto ng mga Inchik during that time. So, and the reason for this was because the Spaniards retained a suspicion of the Chinese. So, very regulated sila. They had curfews, they needed permits to get inside the Intramuros, as with anybody who was not a resident. But more so, and there were also massacres of the Chinese during this period. So, ang point in discussing all of this is that somehow we have assimilated this kind of suspicion of the Chinese. So much so that in 1954, we created, well, the nagka-intermarriages, but even with the intermarriages, the Chinese who had assimilated into the native population retained the characteristics that made them distinctly Chinese. One was that they were hardworking, they were very good at business, they were thrifty, and because of their hardworking nature, then they became successful. And as with any kind of population that is identifiable, or ethnic group that is identifiable that becomes successful, it breeds resentment. So dalawa ngayon yung naging reasons kung bakit nagiging suspicious tayo sa mga Chinese. One was the leftover resentment of the Chinese because Lima Hong's men were able to enter into Intramuros, and the other was because kahit paano na-retain nila yung characteristics nila, they tended to become very clannish also, at they also became very successful. So, success, of course, breeds resentment dahil syempre may kainggitan na ganon. But they constituted the merchant class. The Spanish suspicion of the Chinese, especially those who had assimilated with the Filipinos, deepened because yung mga Chinese, nag-identify sila with the native Filipinos. So, dahil nag-assimilate sila, sumali ngayon sila dun sa revolusyon. Sumali sila, naging mga insurhentos sila. And don't forget that Rizal was a Chinese mestizo, and so was Aguinaldo, who was a descendant of a Chinese, well, he had a Chinese grandfather, and so on. So many members of the revolution, many members of many of our heroes, people who now we consider na national heroes, are of Chinese descent or were descended from Chinese mestizos. So, this carried on in the by the time the Americans came in, the political involvement of the Chinese mestizos did not end. Nung nagkaroon ng tinatawag na natin, nagbago na, no? From the Spaniards, nagka-Treaty of Paris, we woke up one day and, mga Amerikano na nandito. So, nung panahon naman ng mga Amerikano, syempre, dahil the Filipino population was also restless at the start against the Americans, and we had a Philippine-American War. Of course, the Chinese mestizo population, or the Filipino-Chinese, identified again with the Filipinos and were also anti-American at the time. But they continued to enjoy prosperity because they retained that the characteristics of being hardworking and thrifty and all of that. Nevertheless, during this period, nung dumating yung mga Amerikano, ang tingin naman ng mga Amerikano, kahit nag-assimilate na yung mga Chinese, ang tingin nila dun sa mga Chinese ay alien pa rin. So, ang ginawa ng mga so to speak, ay in-encourage nila na yung mga Chinese would put up their own schools, would put up their own community organizations, their own hospitals, etc. Because they were putting up all of these, na-identify na naman sila. Para na naman silang na-segregate from the general population because they had their own schools and their own hospitals and their own organizations and all of that. Tapos, nung 1902, nag-create ang Amerikano ng tinatawag na Chinese Exclusion Act. binawal ngayon yung pagpasok ng mga Chinese laborers dito sa Pilipinas, at ang ginawa nila ay pero pinayagan nila pumasok dito from China yung mga professionals. So nakaapekto yan dun sa growth ng Chinese community. So hindi na sila masyadong lumaki kasi hindi na basta-basta nakakapasok ang mga laborers, tapos may requirements na kung sino ang mga manggagaling ng China. So hindi masyadong lumalaki yung community nila. Furthermore, nagkakaroon ng dahil masyado silang identifiable at segregated na group, nagkakaroon na tumataas na naman yung yung suspicion sa kanila as a separate and alien group, even though they are considered, and even at the time were already considered Filipinos. So nung nagkaroon ng towards the after the Commonwealth, medyo mataas yung sense of nationalism natin. Tayo naman, we also started looking at the Filipino-Chinese community as some people na pwedeng kainggitan. So dahil sa tindi ng inggit, nagpasa tayo ng tinatawag na Retail Trade Nationalization Act, kung saan binawal na ngayon ang retailing, yung mga sari-sari stores, department stores, etc. doon sa mga hindi Filipinos. So, this forced ngayon yung mga Chinese Filipinos who retained their Chinese ways, who retained their Chinese citizenship, to assimilate further and gain Filipino citizenship. So, and they were forced to integrate if they wanted to stay, and if they want, so hindi sila umalis. Yung iba natakot, yung iba they worried about the increasing discrimination, and marami sa kanila lumipat sa US, but the others obtained Filipino nationality and then remained here. Of course, meron din yung mga iba na who tried to circumvent the law. Tapos noon, towards 1985, it was President Marcos na mas madali na. Kasi nung time na yon, yung madali mag-obtain ng nationalism yung mga nationality, yung mga Chinese, kasi they were already born here. So, or yung iba may mga asawa na Filipino. So, it was easy to become Filipino. But if you were coming in off the boat from China, mahirap na during that time. From 1954 until 1975, mahirap mag-acquire ng citizenship. Nung April 1975, nag-issue ng decree si President Marcos, and he made it easier to acquire Filipino citizenship. So may mga Chinese na lumipat dito. They brought with them, again, the same kind of characteristics that made them really successful, and they succeeded here. But what was the purpose of the Retail Trade Nationalization Act? It turned into law the deepening suspicion of the Chinese as a separate ethnicity, so that we did not really, while we acknowledged that they were citizens, so for the most part, and even after 1975, ina-acknowledge natin na Filipino sila, but we still considered them inchik. Diba? Yun pa rin ang tawag natin sa kanila, inchik. Diba? As though they were not part of it. And however, in 1975, dahil nga madali na yung acquisition ng citizenship, binawal din ni President Marcos yung exclusively Chinese schools na nagtuturo ng Chinese culture exclusively. In-include nun sa curriculum ng mga Chinese schools yung Filipino curriculum. They had to learn Filipino, they had to learn Philippine history, etc. So may further nag-assimilate na although they were still identifiably Chinese Filipino or Chinese mestizo, they were further assimilated into Philippine society. Na-correct na lang itong historical wrong, or this racist, seemingly racist intention of the Retail Trade Nationalization Act in 2000, when the Philippine Congress passed the Retail Trade Liberalization Act, which allowed now foreigners to invest in the retail industry, to run retail industries, but to have ownership of only up to 60%. So, ngayon, medyo mas liberal na ang ownership, ang retail trade. So, things like department stores, etc. But why are we looking at the historical participation of the Chinese here in the Philippines? Because ginagamit po yung suspicion that we can locate to the Spanish civil authorities pa. This kind of suspicion that we unwittingly have been adopting against the Chinese. Dun sa Rappler sinasabi ni, parang napaka-suspicious daw that the president is always has met more often with the Chinese or Chinese Filipinos dito sa Duterte government, forgetting that these so-called Chinese Filipinos are actually Filipino, but of Chinese ethnicity or Chinese descent. Ako personally, I am of Sangley descent because I know that my great-grandfather had come from Cavite and was a Sangley because of his looks. But other than that, there's no more Chinese culture. We don't speak Chinese. We don't even remember ever practicing any form of or acknowledging the ethnicity of our lineage. But let's face it, diba, the Chinese are so assimilated into the Filipino Chinese are so assimilated. The term Filipino Chinese is already superfluous. They are Filipino. Pero ginagamit ng mga pahayagan katulad ng Rappler yung pag-distinguish sa kanila because they're playing on a prejudice. Itong prejudice na to, itinanim pa sa atin during the time of the Spanish colonization and deepened during the American colonization period and was even furthered in 1954. Even after we had already acquired our own, we were already governing ourselves. Diba? So, you're making a distinction between Filipinos and Chinese Filipinos, aside from when they own it and they call themselves Chinoy, no? To make a distinction and say that the Chinese Filipinos are less Filipino than the rest of us is, let's call it what it is. It's racist. Bakit? Anong pinagkaiba nila? Diba? You're born here, you're a Filipino. Why should we distinguish between your Filipino-ness because you still have the traditions of your forefathers? Why are you any less Filipino? Diba? And why is Rappler making such a distinction? And in fact, Rappler goes further and says something like, Pia Rañada is quoted as saying that they still have ties to China. So, this plays again on our native suspicion. And the reason I'm giving out this information is to recognize it for what it is. It is racism. It is latent racism. Once you're Filipino, you're Filipino. Why should we distinguish? Why should we have more rules against them? Why should we be suspicious of Filipino-Chinese businessmen if they are Filipino? Okay, and what if they don't no longer, even if you have ties to China, unless you can prove that those ties lead to some kind of disloyalty to the Republic, there is nothing inherently wrong with that. Pero ginagamit kasi itong suspicion na ito to fuel fears about what is going on in the West Philippine Sea, about the landing of the plane in Davao, of the military plane in Davao, to play on our fears of a Chinese, how do you call this, takeover. How is that possible? The Chinese were not even colonizers. They are traditionally traders and in fact have been trading with us since the 10th century. Diba? If anything, we should be more suspicious of the Americans because the Americans actually and truly colonized us. Mas matakot tayo sa US because up to now, they feel that we are a country that they can still dictate to. And they had been feeling that way since the colonial period, since the American colonial period. So, we have to recognize this suspicion of the Chinese for what it is. Racism. And our politicians, people like Gary Alejano and possibly the Rappler are playing on these fears. Now, so let's recognize it for what it is. There are similarities in other countries na merong particular ethnic group or particular segment of the population na pinagsususpetsahan. Pero pinagsususpetsahan yan, kadalasan dala ng inggit. They're successful, they become rich usually because of their own hard work, but also because they help each other out. And pinagsususpetsahan natin sila that they are anti-Filipino. When the fact is, this suspicion feeds more into their feeling, their isolationism. The more they feel like they identify only with each other, then the more we are feeding into their segregation. So, wag tayong sumali dyan sa gulo. kasi nakakakita rin ako ng mga comments even on this page na minumura sila or inaano sila na kasi itong mga to they violate the laws, kasi itong mga to they don't follow whatever. You have to recognize, we have to examine ourselves and understand that this is a form of racism that we're practicing against Filipinos of Chinese ethnicity or Chinese descent. 'Di ba? Huwag tayong magpalaro. Huwag tayong pagoyo, so to speak, dun sa mga nagsasabi sa atin na na we should be suspicious of the Chinese and all that they want to dictate on our foreign policy and say that we must not have any kind of that we must declare war, for example, on China, or that we have to treat with aggression what is happening in Scarborough. Maganda kasi kanina na iniliwanag na ni Spock's Harry Roque, having the Filipino fishermen who were allegedly harassed explained that they were not harassed, that in fact they are allowed to fish in Scarborough. They are allowed to fish, although there are certain things that they still feel uncomfortable because yung Chinese Coast Guard nga minsan inaakyat yung boat nila, humihingi ng isda and all that, pero niliwanag nila that this is not harassment. At least they do not agree that to characterize it as harassment. So as soon as we are able to recognize, as long as we are able to recognize na nilalaro yung fears natin, na ginagamit yung historical fear or suspicion natin against ourselves so that we will subscribe to a more aggressive policy towards China, diba? Whoa, wait a minute. Teka, we have had historical ties with China, and in fact, the Sultan of Sulu, as you very well know, had gone on a state visit to China and established one of the first international treaties in the 12th century. Wait, I have to check that kung 12th century nga talaga. But and in fact, there was a movie by national artist Eddie Romero, Hari sa Hari, Lahi sa Lahi, not documenting, telling that story of the Sultan's visit to China and why some Filipinos, in fact, already relocated to China during that trip. What am I saying? What I'm saying is that considering the centuries-old ties with China, it is not surprising that we are still continuing with this kind of, we are finally recognizing our long-term relationship with it, our long-term trade relationship with it. Diba? If we're going to play on racist fears of a Chinese takeover or profound Chinese influence, then we should also be very suspicious of a guy who occupied Malacanang with the middle name of Cojuangco, diba? Who is descended from, who has Fukianese ancestors. So, let's not go there. Let's not do that. Let's not play into the fears of that that are being used against us. These fears, can be traced to the Spanish colonial period, the American colonial period, and to 1954 and these periods. And it's time for us to quit that. It's time for us to stop even calling them Filipino Chinese. They're Filipinos. They have the same rights as we do. True that they are probably more, hardworking. They can be very clannish, but I think that the clannishness, there are two reasons for that. One is, the traditional ones have retained their cultural ties, their cultural identification. And two is that because ina-other natin sila, kino-consider natin sila na not exactly Filipino. In fact, meron pa nga nagsasabi na not real Filipinos. Remember nung according to this paper by Louisa Yap, nung gumraduate the UP had a summa cum laude graduate, Tiffany Uy. Tapos when she graduated with one of the highest grade point averages, some of the comments about her were, bakit hindi totoong Filipino yung yung naging summa cum laude? Bakit, nasa na yung mga totoong Filipino? Bakit yung mga inchik ang puro nangingibabaw? Dito, bakit sila yung parating na nanalo? Bakit sila yung yumayaman? Bakit sila yung... What do you mean sila? Pinoy yan. Diba? Don't call them sila because they are us. There are very few Filipinos who cannot claim some measure of Chinese ancestry. Diba? Even this president, even the president before him, even Gloria Arroyo has relatives, and madali kay Gloria Arroyo because her lineage is in the Records Management and Archives Office because descendant siya nila Kandula. So, in fact, one of her ancestors was the ancestor of her husband, Arroyo. So, yun, yung mga the Tuwasons. Actually, Gloria Arroyo can trace her lineage to a Tuwason. So, they're so assimilated here that there is no they. Okay? I mean, it's time for us to stop othering the Chinese, the Filipino-Chinese communities, or people who claim ancestry or ethnicity to the Chinese. Diba? So, ganun lang yun. Stop. We should not allow our politicians to play on our fears, on our suspicion. When the suspicion goes back to, the Chinese pirate Lima Hong. Now, I saw a comment here on my wall when I mentioned Lima Hong na, ayan, hanggang ngayon yung mga inchik ganun pa rin. Again, that's othering. Let's not do that to fellow Filipinos. And if we do away with our latent suspicion of the Chinese who claim the Filipinos who claim Chinese ethnicity, then the clearer the picture it will be of the West Philippine Sea. So dun sa kanina nag-press conference, nag-press briefing si Spock's Harry Roque, and it became also very clear that we are continuing to deal with China the way we would normally deal with a foreign country, except that we have decided to junk the traditional suspicion of the Chinese na ini-impose sa atin ng US dati. So, ngayon, our own separate foreign policy and our own dealings with China without the baggage that was imposed on us before. So, yun, let me deal with your questions. Sabi ni GM dito, pero aminin natin, pag Chinese, inuuna ang Chinese. Tama o mali? Hindi. Kasi, when you say Chinese, you're talking about China. O sige, di China, uunahin nila ang China. Siyempre, like Filipinos, uunahin nila ang Filipinos. Diba? So, that's Kaya nga, JM, what you're doing is othering. But if you're talking about Filipino-Chinese, then, hindi ba, ganun din naman tayo. Uunahin mo pamilya mo. Why do you think that they are any different from us when we do the exact same thing? Diba, uunahin natin pamilya natin. Pag bumoboto tayo, who do we vote for? People that we actually know. People we think we can rely on. Members of our own family. Members of our extended family. Associates. People we have experience with. Everybody does that. To say that only the Filipino-Chinese do that would be to ignore our own culture. The Filipino culture, which is very clannish as it is. Diba? It's just that sometimes some clans do it better. Sabi ni Xian, the bias is there as well, and most would accept and say half Caucasians but discriminating on half Chinese. Yes. Sabi ni Myra, parang wala pong pinagkaiba sa tingin ng ilang Filipino sa mga Muslim, kaya di umuunlad ang Pilipinas dahil sa pagmamataas ng mga angkan, di pa rin tanggap ang pagiging diversified ng mga Filipinos. Unlike here in SG, lahat ng lahi respetado. Well, that's the point nga. That's why we're doing this kind of discussion, so that we at least understand kung bakit tayo, why is it that our politicians have targeted the Chinese, because it is very easy for them to play on a historical racial fear. Okay. Sabi ni Jume Ogata, sa pagkakatanda ko, ang unang gumawa ng panghara sa mga ngisda natin, mismong kapwa natin noong araw, kasi yung lugar din naman namin sa Navotas, umunlad sa pangingisda, pero hindi ko maalala kung sino yung nakaupong pangulo noon, na ang daming pinagbawal na lugar na hindi pwedeng manghuli, kaya ang mga ngisda natin napunta sa malalayong lugar. Dahil mismong Coast Guard natin, hinaharas ang mga ngisda natin. Yung mga panahon na yun, nakaupo pa si Bong Revilla nung nangyari yan, at biglang naghirap ang mga tao sa Navotas at Malabon nang dahil sa administrasyon na yun. I see. So, di ba? Then, then let's call it more of, it's probably more of a class issue than it is with a race or ethnicity issue. Sabi ni Baluya, Mark Eric, kung Philam okay lang, inaako natin, pero kung Chinoy, ina-others natin. Diba? That's a good interpretation. We're all Filipinos, sabi ni Jok Tigas, I'm born here and I love this country. I'm okay na inaako natin, kung Chinoy, ina-others natin. Sabi ni Mark Roland Garcia, hindi ko na umpisan live mo, legal ba na lumapit sa pinag-uusapan isla yung malalaking fishing boat, may loba ukol doon. Wala. Pero, unlike before, I think Spock's Harry was underscoring the fact that nakakapangisda na now. All international relations is based on some kind of compromise. So, for now, kung meron mang any form of harassment or exclusion in that area, then rest assured, sinabi naman ni Spock's Harry na nagpadala sila ng, pinadala nila ng notice on China about this. I don't think it was a protest yet, pero napadala na ng notice ang Chinese. Sabi ni Ray, malakas talagang racism sa culture natin, mga sarili natin, sinesegregate natin like Bisaya kasi or Ilocano, or Kapampangan or Batanggenyo. Ngayon may theory tungkol dyan, kung bakit napaka-regionalistic natin, kung bakit we identify so much with smaller groups rather than with the entire group that is the Philippines, is because we are 7,000 islands, more or less, diba? And islands do tend to segregate us, but it wasn't always that way. As a matter of fact, because we are water people, water tended to bring us together rather than keep us apart. But when we lost that identification with the water culture, hindi tayo masyadong tumatawid dagat, or yung tawid dagat, yung dagat ay tinitignan natin bilang segregating thing, then we started solely to identify with the people who are closest to us. Sabi ni Carlos, watching from Annapolis, Maryland. I'm from Santa Cruz, Zambales, about 2 hours from that fishing place. Okay naman sila doon, misinformed lang yung iba. Well, thank you very much. At least, meron tayong information also coming from that area. Sabi ni Erlinda, ang liwanag ng explanation, sana lawakan ng mga taong pag-unawa nila. Sabi ni Yesha, masyado kasi tayong regionalistic. Pero we shouldn't also be too hard on ourselves. Tandaan natin that there are historical reasons or historical basis kung bakit tayo nagkakaganito. Pero, once we recognize the reasons for it, then we can help overcome them. How do we do that? Dapat, iniintindi natin ang history natin. So, ito ngayon, naiintindihan natin ang kasaysayan ng mga Chinese dito sa Pilipinas, then there is no longer any reason to consider them as others kasi assimilated na sila. They are already Filipinos, so there is no more they. We are all Filipinos. Tingnan nyo nga ang singkit-singkit ko eh. Diba? Kahit paano, hindi mo masasabing there's no Chinese ancestry in my lineage. Diba? Kasi nga, my great-grandfather was a Sangley. Came from Cavite. So, we know that kahit paano, the influence of the Chinese is so profound, we can no longer say we're Filipinos without acknowledging na meron tayong pansit. Diba? Sabi ni Leanne, it's time to upgrade our fishing vessels similar to jeepney modernization to equip fishermen with navigational systems. I don't think that there is any lack of technology here. It's available. What's not available is financing. So, don't think that our fishermen are only in bangkas. The fishermen who go to Baja Masinloc and who go all the way to Scarborough aren't just the bangka type. Diba, these are motorized and they're bigger than the outrigger kind of bangka. So, let's also get rid of our inherent biases that when you say fisherman, kala mo nagsasagwan. Hindi. Our fishermen do. In fact, many of our fishermen have, they're not marginalized. So, there's a difference. Yung mga marginalized fishermen, usually, hindi sila masyadong lumalaot. Nag-fish sila dun sa municipal waters. So, doon sa mga areas, hindi sila masyadong lumalayo. So, to be able to fish in farther areas, in deeper waters, then you need bigger boats. And we do have that. Of course, It would be nice if there was more financing for fishing, pero if there are issues like this nga, like in the West Philippine Sea and going all the way to Scarborough, and tignan natin din kung hindi ganun pa kasira yung area na yon, if there is enough fish to go around for it to be commercially viable. Sabi ni Georgie Loyola, yes, regionalism even brought rise to a tag of Republic of Cebu, which is otherism again. Yes, but also recognize that Cebu is as guilty of othering everybody else. Diba? Gusto nila kanila yung national language and all of that. And ako, I don't mind what they want. It is more like the compelling to be part of the Republic, compelling to recognize that you have many achievements and all of that, but don't forget that you're still part of the Republic. Sabi ni Miguel Francisco, kasi ina-others na natin ngayon ang yellows after decades of being in power, kaya ang lakas nila gumawa ng issue. Actually, that's a good point. Ina-others natin sila. Totoo yan. Kaya, di ba, for the longest time, and I'm very, very guilty of this, this is also my fault, hindi ko dapat tinatawag yung yung others na others, o yung mga dilaw as dilaw, kasi it is in fact divisive. Diba? Ina-others nga natin sila. But the fact is that we are all Filipinos. Yun na nga, when it comes to the discussion of politics, then we have to give them a tag to identify them as those who have a particular philosophy or particular mindset na hindi rin natin kapareho. Wala tayong choice but you're right, we also have to recognize na ina-others din natin sila. Sabi ni Emily, sana nga maayos ang problema sa Scarborough Shoal kasi may mapapanood kasi YouTube, lumapit ang Chinese na nakakasakay sa boat, lumapit sa mga isda, naiyak na lang ang isang mga isda kasi wala siyang magawa, na basta-basta na lang nabukas ang timba at kinuha ang gusto nila. In-explain yun kanina during the press briefing, one of the reasons kung bakit ganito, of course ayaw nila yon. Hindi naman daw kino-confiscate yung isda, pero hinihingan sila. So, they don't like it, parang kinokotongan sila, so to speak. Yun ang ayaw nila na masyadong madalas silang kinokotongan. But yun yung pinagka-clarify nila. But to say na hindi sila pinapayagan mag-fish, hindi, iba yun. Sabi ni Alta, Monique, gusto ng LP, mabahala tayo sa mga Chinese dito. Na-surprise din ako kasi yung better half ko ay sadly, dilawan mag-isip. Bigla lang nababahala siya na ang daming Chinese sa paligid. Sabi ko, Halar, kaya lang ka pa ba na concern sa maraming Chinese? Love na love mo nga ang Mamon. Look, you give me my favorite Salazar Hopia. Kalaw kayo mga dilawan. That's it. That's exactly it. Parang all of a sudden, takot tayo sa Inchik when all of this time, we have been trading with them since the 10th century. What the hell are you talking about? Diba? Suddenly, takot tayo sa Inchik. Welcome natin sila ng welcome all the time. We have been, like I said, we've been trading with them since the 10th century. Ngayon kayo matatakot? Sabi ni Jojo, Alejandro needs to shut up na gusto niya ang war to Chinese. Kung gusto niya talaga, he will go to war for himself. Sabi ni Jock, West Philippine issue is being used to fuel hatred against the Chinese because America is threatened by them. Duterte realized long ago that China is now a superpower. Why not join them rather than oppose? It's a win-win for us. Yun na nga, the point is that we have to start making foreign policy not based on particular biases. In fact, biases that were imposed upon us, historically imposed upon us, so that we don't even realize that those are the roots of our bias, of our othering. Diba? Isipin mo that part of the reason why we are suspicious, why we call them others, is because Lima Hong's men were able to breach the walls of the Intramuras, or because when we finally recognized the Chinese's presence here and asked them to assimilate, they became so successful and far more successful than the natives population, and they had so much money that even the Spanish colonials had to recognize them. It's suspicion of success. It's, if you water it down, if you bring it down to its bare essentials, it's ingyat. So let's recognize it for what it is, and let's make foreign policy based on what is good for the nation. And nakikita naman natin, is it good for the nation to declare war? Is it good for the nation to be aggressive? We can compromise. We can sit down, we can talk, we can keep relations with the Chinese, we can trade with them while continuing to talk about our exclusive economic zone. What is wrong? Diba? Okay, Jean, I will answer your question. Pero yung premise mo, medyo maano na kaagad eh. Why are Manileños very regionalistic? Right off the bat, inother mo na kami. Manileños, regionalistic. To people like me from Mindanao. I'm sorry, but I grew up in Quezon City. Batang Cubao talaga ako. But I also grew up partly in Mindanao. So you cannot say in general Manileños are like this. First of all, this construct, people keep talking about an Imperial Manila. Imperial Manila is a construct. What is Manila made up of? Except of people who have been coming from various parts of the country and relocating to Manila. There are very few people who are indigenous to Manila. So, saan ang gagaling? So, sasabihin ninyo Imperial Manila, pero yung mga denizens ng Manila actually come from the provinces. Kaya nga na-empty ang Manila during Holy Week and during the times na may election. When you say Imperial Manila, what exactly do you mean? And why do you say that we are regionalistic? How can we be regionalistic? Manila isn't even a region. And there is no, I'm not saying that there are no people who don't understand Mindanao, because let's face it, the average Filipino doesn't understand Mindanao because they have not been there. And because, because they keep, there's so much play up in the media about, about fighting, about kidnapping and all of that, that there is this artificial, what do you call this, construct about what it is. But it isn't just Manila, it's the rest of the world. It isn't, it's so much of the country that has so much misinformation about that. I go to Mindanao all the time. In fact, part of my childhood was spent in Sulu, in Jolo, and in Cotabato, and in Zamboanga. So, we also have to be careful that when you generalize, automatically you are guilty as well of othering. You can say some people from Manila don't understand Mindanao. Yes, that is acceptable. But when you say right away Manileños are regionalistic, that's it. You just isolated everybody else. Sabi ni Jovinel, I'm Cebuano and we're always discriminated by the Tagalogs because of our accent when we speak Tagalog. But when I am in Mindanao, or when I am in the Visayas, then I am also discriminated because I am Tagalog and I do not understand Visaya. Diba? People laugh at me. I don't care, but don't say that it only goes one way. And that's the whole point of this lecture, the whole point of this discussion. The whole point of this discussion is to understand that discrimination also comes from us. That we also have to recognize that we participate in it when we others. Diba? When the fact is that we're all Filipinos, sure, it's funny to talk about accents. Sure, it's funny, but come on, let's face it, sino bang dehado? Diba kung Tagalog ka, dehado ka na kaagad because the national language is so close to Tagalog that you don't really learn another language. Whereas if you are Visaya, you will learn Filipino and you will learn English and automatically you have 3 languages. Diba? Sabi ni JC Crook, I'm Filipino-American, my father is American with a German and Irish descent, and my mother is Filipina. I totally understand racism that we're facing right now. Yes, so how do we deal with it? First, we have to understand the historical roots. Ganito po yun, ganito yung nangyari. O, ayan na naman. Crits, bakit ngaw-ngaw nang nangaw-ngaw ang Taga-Luzon about martial law? Ayan na naman, Taga-Luzon ako. Ngumangaw-ngaw ba ako about martial law? Yung ngumangaw, identify them, because once you make a generalization about people from a particular geographical area, then you are othering and you are in a sense being, well, it's not racism kasi hindi naman race, regionalistic. Diba? Parang sinasabi mo, kami mga taga Mindanao, di namin maintindihan kung bakit kami inaapi ng mga taga Maynila. Unang-una, taga Maynila ako, inapi ba kita? Diba? Generalizations really do not help. Understand this. If you see somebody who is othering you, then identify that person and then let us deal with the fact of othering. Let's deal with the fact of the discrimination. Let's deal with it on an individual basis and understand that people are educated now and that we can talk about this, and in fact, we must talk about this. So it's easy for us to talk about othering the Chinese kasi ang tingin ninyo, hindi tayo yon. But when you're talking about Imperial Manila, don't you think you're othering us as well? Diba? When you're talking about itong mga Taga-Luzon, ngaw-ngaw about this or that, hindi others nyo kami. Diba? We're actually a minority here, and I hope you recognize it. I hope you recognize that people are playing on our fears. People are playing on the tendency to be divided. And when we are divided, we're easy to govern by, by selfish interests. That's how they governed us for such a long time. Buti may Duterte. Buti may Duterte who turns all of these things upside down. Diba? Buti may Duterte who challenges our cherished beliefs. Diba? Nenita Haley says, I remember when I studied in Tacloban, some people there made fun of people speaking Tagalog. I personally experienced it. Kala kasi nila, nagyayabang ako sa pagsasalita ng Tagalog noon. Di nila alam na bagong salta lang talaga ako doon at trying hard pa matuto ng waray-waray dialect. Dapat kasi, sinasa isip ng mga Pinoy yung discrimination na gano'n. Sabi ni Avi, na-trigger lang naman tong usapan na to because of Pia Lanyada's article in Raptor. Focus na lang tayo sa pagka-racist ni Pia and how we can handle it. No, Avin, we have to discuss this. It is a national trait. As long as we discuss it, then there's more information coming out. What I'm trying to do here is to be able to recognize our tendency to have regional biases. It's not necessarily wrong, but it is wrong when people try to manipulate those fears. Okay? Yun nga yung sinasabi natin. Yung sinasabi natin is that people like Gary Alejano are playing on our biases, playing on our fears. And once we recognize that, once we recognize our biases and try to deal with it with more information, then there's less of a chance that these people will be able to do that to us. Hindi ba nila alam na karamihan yata ng mga talented, especially artists come from Visayas and Mindanao, multilingual at mas fluent sa pagdating sa English? Ako, I think the talent comes from everywhere. Sabi ni Habite Angela, only yellow and paid rallies sa ngaw-ngaw ng ngaw. I'm from Northern Luzon and I support martial law in Mindanao. And FYI, marami ng Muslim brothers and sisters dito as merchants, and even the local government allowed them to build their mosque here. And see, that is my point. Some of our biases are traditional. They might no longer be true. Diba? Teka, kailangan kong saksak yung phone. They might no longer be true, so kailangan i-recognize din natin the fact that they're playing on traditional biases na hindi na rin natin for instance, yun nga, saying Imperial Manila when there is no more any such thing as an Imperial Manila. Imperial Manila, like I said, is a construct. It's no longer true that there is one, because most of the people who are in Manila come from other regions. Sorry if it looks really awkward because I have to make saksak the phone. Sorry. But I will continue talking. Okay. There you go. Ayan, nagsaksak lang ng phone. So, okay. Sabi ni Miguel Francisco, we're all Filipinos. Period. No need to say we're better than others. Above all others, we're all Filipinos. Well, totoo yun. Of course, we can't help it. It's a human tendency to identify with particular groups, diba? Human talaga yan. That's not limited to Filipinos. People tend to do that anywhere. People identify with their states, with their countries, with them. Tignan mo, pag nasa ibang bansa tayo, nag-identify tayo as Filipino. Yeah, we so like to be different. We so like to be able to identify with particular groups. That's natural, and it's human. But as with any human, it is essential for us to recognize these biases so that we can address them, diba? And we can make ourselves better, and we can recognize it. Ang important kasi is to recognize the biases so that they don't use it. Nobody can use it against us. Okay, other questions. Sorry, medyo dumilim. Yan, other questions. Nakalambola room ako. Sabi ni Maria, actually, nainggit kami mga Manileño sa mga galing probinsya kasi rich in tradition, sariling language nila. So, yan. Nainggit naman talaga. Ako, personally, hindi ako umuwi to any province. My father, however, meron man kami probinsya. Kaya Tagalog din kami. My father is from Malolos, Bulacan. And my mother was already born in Marikina. But my great-grandfather came from Cavite and relocated to Laguna. So, we've traced our lineage. Sabi ni JC, so it sucks for us half-breed because we seem to lose our identity because when in the Philippines, they overlook me as Filipino because my color is white. Here in the States, they overlook me as American because of my Filipino accent. Well, I think that holds true with many people as well, with those who are of mixed race and mixed descent. Can you imagine what the first generation Filipino-Chinese felt? Sabi ni Alfie Zamora, ang sarap kasi matuto ng different dialects. Well, dialects are easy, languages are hard. And remember that Tagalog is a language. Bisaya is a language. Okay? Baka kasi Kapampangan is a language, Ilocano is a language. And please don't discriminate and call them dialects because they're not variations of a language. They are languages. Sabi ni Avin, I fully agree in your answer to my comment as labels identify, labels also isolate. Ang importante, alam natin na may naglalaro sa ating fears so that we don't get carried away. Yun mismo. Sabi ni RN, this is an old discussion that I've already had before. Correct me, baka pumali ang pagkatapos. Alam ko na ang Tagalog as our national language, bang salita is that? Of course not. Bisaya, Ilonggo, Ilocano, Kapampangan, Pangasinense, Kiniraya. These are all languages, not dialects. Mandarin is might be a I don't know if Mandarin is a dialect. I don't know enough. I don't know enough about the Chinese languages. However, I do know about the Philippine languages, and they are languages. I could say trust me on this because I'm a linguistics major, but I'll explain. A language is when two languages are spoken, the speakers of the two languages will not understand each other. A dialect is a variation of a language. Therefore, there can be like 10 dialects to the Tagalog language. So, dati sinasabi nila that Batangas Tagalog is a dialect of Tagalog. So, may mga ganon. It's a variation on the main language. The speakers of dialects, two different dialects, will understand each other, whereas speakers of two different languages will not. Sabi ni Jean Bolado, there was a complete story in my comment regarding Manila and its regionalism. However, another question is, why was Tagalog chosen as a national language? Well, historically, because Quezon basically chose it, and Quezon was Tagalog. I think that was just it. But, no, that wasn't it. Okay, it was like this. At the time, the center of commerce was Manila. And, in fact, the center of commerce was so traditionally Manila that it became necessary to engage in commerce, to speak in Tagalog. Because at the time, while there was a Chinese community already, it was small compared to the Tagalogs who were, at the time, businessmen, who conducted most of the commerce for the area, for most of Luzon. And while there was commerce being conducted, and in fact very, very well, in places like Cebu and Iloilo and Butuan and Davao, it was recognized internationally at the time of the colonial period, and at the time when we were already trading with other countries, formally under the colonial government. It was the language of commerce. So by the time dumating si Quezon, it became Tagalog because nga it was the language of those who were engaging, primary people who were engaged in commerce. Sabi ni Don Dayaw, mga Pinoy talaga na racist, lalo na pag galing sa probinsya. Tapos pag nagpunta sa Manila, dinidiscriminate sila. Taga-probinsya ko, naawa ko sa mga nagdi-discriminate sa mga promdi, lalo na yung mga nawala. Lalo na yung mga kapatid natin na taga-Bisaya, Mangyan, etc. Okay, but first you have to understand one of the main things. is that discrimination doesn't just happen, isn't just conducted by Manileños against Promdis. Okay? It is also the other way around. Makikita yung ibang mga comments niyo. So, I think I will just remove this charger. Ayan. Okay, let's just wrap up. What we see here, one of the issues why the West Philippine Sea has become such a flashpoint for us isn't so much because of the fact that it's not just what is going on there. But some of our politicians have been playing on our fears or our natural discrimination towards an identifiable ethnic group or an identifiable ethnicity. But this should not be the case. Once you identify, you understand the historical roots of the suspicions that they play on, then our politicians will be less likely to use this kind of discrimination, this kind of suspicion, to manipulate us into certain actions that we are probably not ready for. Congressman Alejano's clear inciting to war, or at least encouragement of the conduct of war against the Chinese, using the West Philippine Sea as his flashpoint, is a classic case in point. Kung napin ko yon, hindi ko sinasadya kasi nga napindot ko. Kainis. I can't do it. Naiirita ako. So please stop making pansin little things like that because it's so distracting. So anyway, as I was saying, ayun, hanapin ko na lang dito. Little things like that because it's so distracting. Okay. I'm looking at your comments. So, the reason for this discussion is to understand the historical roots of these suspicions so that we understand them, and the more we understand them, and the more that we understand also our tendency to be biased towards any other identifiable group, whether it is a regional group or an ethno-linguistic group, understand the historical basis for those biases, so that these biases or these kinds of mindsets cannot be used against us by politicians whose best interests aren't ours. Okay. Ayun. Unpin. Ayun. There you go. So, sabi ni Junaida, sana matulungan natin lahat ng Pilipino para asenso ng bansa natin. Agree. Bibingo na yan si Congressman Alejano, sabi ni Miguel Francisco, nung weekend ba siya? Totoo. Sabi ni Lee Cooper Fulkerson, tama naman din na may bansag ang isang grupo, lalo na kung di na magandang ginagawa sa bayan, para maging aware lalo yung mga taong nananatili sa maling pagkakakilala sa isang tao o grupo. Hindi, tama naman din siya. Pero di ibig sabihin na di natin sila kinikilalang Filipino. Tama. Agree. That's a variation on what I said earlier. So, I guess this discussion wasn't just limited solely to our discussion of the biases that are being played against the Filipino Chinese or Filipinos of Chinese descent. But it also helps us to recognize our own regional biases, like the almost unthinking use of the term Imperial Manila. Kasi yung mga taga Maynila, kukunti naman talaga yung tubong Maynila eh. Like I said, Imperial Manila is already a construct because it is really people by people who don't even identify with Manila, who actually come from the provinces and in fact go home during holidays and during when they have to vote, so that the actual Manileños are very, very few. And to say that there is still an Imperial Manila really is simply a recognition of the geographical location of the seat of power. Yes, it is located in Manila, but to extend the mindset as saying that yung mga taga Maynila ay ganito is to ignore the fact that the reason we call it Imperial Manila is because the seat of power and the decisions are being made here. And because the decisions are being made here, sometimes those decisions weren't very smart or didn't even take into consideration the reality that is on the ground in areas that are not Manila. And yes, that is wrong. But it is wrong because of the presumption that the decision is, because the decision nga is made here, but not necessarily by people from here. See, that the decision makers, we have congressmen and senators from all over the country. And to say that the decision is Imperial Manila would be to ignore the fact that we have representatives who just happen to be making those decisions in the seat of power, which is located in Manila. Diba? When President Duterte was first elected, the first thing I said was, Davao has now become the center of the universe. Diba? Why? Because everything now is in Davao. Suddenly, everything is happening in Davao. Would I be justified in saying that it is now Imperial Davao? Diba? Because decisions are being made by people who are from Davao. The seat of government, the executive power is exercised by so many people who are coming from Davao. People who are appointed mostly have links to Davao. And they're in fact, some of them are in fact appointed primarily because they are from Davao. Can I now start saying Imperial Davao? Diba? So recognize biases for what they are and look at them for if they're intrinsically irrational. If they're irrational, then it's easy to use that to manipulate us. Sabi ni Don, I agree na marami talagang regional biases feel ng mga taga-Manila superior sila. Kaya agree ako na dapat i-improve at i-invest outside Manila. Nag-relocate ako from Manila to Clark, kaya dapat i-push natin ng federalism. Proud to be karambolista. Okay, but that's not exactly what I was saying. What I was saying is that as much as you claim that Manila has biases, by saying that we have biases without examining that kind of bias is also a bias in itself. Yeah. So, Ani and Delia, PRRD should hear this lecture. Of course, he's going to hear this lecture. He's going to hear it from me. I gave him a lecture on the importance of history when I visited him in Malacanang. You think that you can tease me like that? So, I know that it's very difficult to hear that the term Imperial Manila is actually a biased term. But it is time for us to examine our regional biases. Sabi ni Crom de la Rosa, we're proud to be hospitable and market that to foreigners, but if we are close to our fellow Filipinos, then what kind of hospitality is that? I don't think naman we're close to fellow Filipinos. But I think that it is time for us to start examining biases so that they are not used to manipulate us. Diba? Our tendency towards regionalism, our clannishness is a reason also that we have very little national identity. We want the economic benefits of a strong nation. But at the same time, we are unable to identify with a strong nation because our identities are limited to our regionalism. And a lot of the times it is because we're unable to move past the biases. So that was the whole purpose of the discussion here, is just to examine how we think. There is a historical basis for our politicians using the Chinese and othering them and warmongering, diba? And raising the flag of nationalism and saying, we have to be against the Chinese, we have to declare war against the Chinese. Ay, naapi tayo ng mga inchik. But we also have to examine other biases. But in doing so, we are now forced to examine our own other biases. But that's okay. I'm not saying that it's completely bad, but that's one of the reasons why we can't identify with ourselves as a country is because masyado tayong nag-identify with the region. If we can get rid of words like Promdi and Imperial Manila, I would be very, very happy. Kasi ako personally, because my father was in the Air Force, was in the military, was assigned to so many places, and because I traveled a lot as a child, then I don't see any place as better or worse than any other place, except siguro, I think that the quality of light in Ilocos is outstanding, but I think that the landscapes of Mindanao are, nakakaiyak sa ganda. And I see so much beauty and so much talent and so much good all over the country that it would be silly to claim that any region or any particular locality has a monopoly on anything. I think that this country is just so diverse and full of potential. And I think Filipinos, because I'm inherently biased as a Filipino, are the best. And I've been to many parts of the world. And that it is time for us to examine ourselves. Yun lang. It's no need to fight about this, no need to, but I need to recognize so that our politicians don't use us and don't manipulate us. Yan, sabi ni Miguel Francisco, and I like this, and let's end it on this note. Sabi ni Miguel Francisco, a clear example of walang bias or regionalism, pag may laban si Pacquiao, everyone is united and we are all watching. Oh, yun ang gusto ko. Yun ang di ba for that moment, pag lumalaban si Pacquiao, wala nang crime rate eh. Di ba? Because we're all on his side. We're all on, well, for the most part, there are times na hindi eh. But, yun nga, I agree with that. If we could extend that feeling of being one all together, then maybe we can get somewhere. We can get to, but as it is, hirap na hirap tayo to paddle in a single direction. Kasi syempre, merong mga tao na they try to hold us back. I don't want to dwell on the people who hold us back, but more on their intentions. If the intentions naman are for the purpose of, of justice or for the purpose of being, of just making sure that we do it the right way, then okay lang. Diba? Okay lang, we recognize that also. So, again, maraming salamat. Yung hindi pa po nagpa-follow sa Luminous, please click like and follow. Yung hindi pa po nagsasubscribe sa mga live natin, please don't forget to subscribe. At the end of this video, there's a button that says subscribe, and you can click that. And if you haven't shared, please go ahead, do so and share. We're also on YouTube, Trixie Cruz-Angeles. I would like to thank everybody because all your contributions are amazing, and they ground me, they help me realize that, in a lot of ways, I still have a lot of studying to do and a lot of things to learn. And I'm so glad that I am learning from you. Thank you very much. Again, mabuhay ang Pilipinas. The time for self-examination, the study of our history, and the study of our culture is now. We have a president who is versed in our history, is able to create a vision from it, from his study of history. We, as the citizens of this republic, can do no less. Thank you very much. We'll do this again sometime this week, I hope. In the meantime, have a good day. It's rainy outside. Please be careful.